So I had an informal video interview with Raj Sidhu, RGD. He's the design director at Vidyard in Kitchener. He was super nice. We went through my portfolio from school. Very, very friendly guy. Just asked me lots of questions about my work. It was very laid back, low key. He wanted to hire me when we were done, but I already had my job at Studio Locale. So a few months later in the summer, I was asked to join the RGD events committee. So during the pandemic, I've helped the events committee plan and execute several virtual events, including the recent Creative Directions Conference last week. And then I was also extremely fortunate to be mentored by Diego Lopez, RGD. He's a creative director at Compass Creative in Hamilton. Super, super nice guy. I loved chatting with him. We met, I think it was like 6 times for an hour over lunch. I had applied for an RGD mentor because I was struggling a bit in my role at my last job. And he just helped me create like a game plan for some of the issues I was having. And he shared tons of resources and shared his experience as a junior designer. And he had gone through a lot of the same things that I was experiencing. So it was just great talking to him. And right now I'm currently working with Allison Pizak, RGD. She's the director of marketing and creative at Dick Apparel, and we're working on an identity project for a line of hand-woven clothing and housewares, actually made by women entrepreneurs in Cambodia. So I was super interested in the project because it's designed for social good, and I'm trying to integrate more of that into my design practice. This is one of the, I just presented 2 concepts for the identity to the owner of the company, Claudia. I think that was on Thursday last week. So this is one of them, and this is the other one, and she went with this second one. So next steps will be building out the rest of the assets for that brand and that identity. I'm not sure how much further I'm going to take it. With the new job, I might be kind of busy, but it's been fun. So I'll push it as far as I can. And I highly recommend RGD's mentorship programs. I've just found it so awesome making those connections. It's been really great. And then last year, I was appointed to the RGD Board of Directors as one of the provisional representatives. I was so honored and humbled to be asked to join. It's just such an inspiring group of designers. And I'm always blown away by how much work the RGD community and the staff and the rest of the members are doing. The board's made up of all the chairs of each of the committee, and it's fascinating to hear what all the committees are up to. And like Rob just said, I've been working with Danielle Wong to reinstate the provisional committee. And we have selected members, and we're having our first meeting this Thursday, so it's pretty exciting. We're hoping that the committee will help just provide some support to provisional RGDs who are feeling a little out of place after graduation and are still finding their way in the industry. So as part of my contribution to the RGD, I'm really hoping to help new grads entering the workforce and with that transition, especially during this strange time, which is why I was super happy to talk to you all today. And I feel like there's a need for support around working from home, creating a work-life balance, like if that's possible right now, and prioritizing your mental health as well. So, we're all in this together, and the RGD community is here to support us. So a little bird told me that you'd like to hear about job hunting. So I'll be honest, since I graduated from my design program, I haven't done a lot of job hunting. I've spent plenty of time looking for jobs, filling out applications, tailoring my portfolio. But in my experience, I usually don't hear anything back. So I send my beautiful portfolio out into the world, and then it goes into some black hole. And I never hear anything. So since design school, every work opportunity I've had, big and small, has been through word of mouth recommendations and networking, which is probably why my website is only about 25% done. So say yes to opportunities when they come along, but there's a caveat that I will explain in a moment. Just be patient. Like so far in my life, I've found that when you get the things you want, rarely Are they delivered according to schedule or arrive exactly how you ordered it? So each experience will build on the last, and people remember how you made them feel. And sometimes people and places come back into your life that you weren't expecting. So the caveat to this, of course, you may have seen it at the bottom, is say yes unless it is spec work, meaning they don't want to pay you. There are other ways of being paid other than money. It's not worth your time, so will it be a good portfolio piece? If yes, then maybe. You have to trust your gut. So is future you going to feel bad about doing the work for free or almost nothing? That's something that you have to decide. You have to feel good about it. So is it for a nonprofit who truly doesn't have a budget to pay you? Most of them do, so be wary. Be wary of nonprofits saying that they can't pay you for your work. And lastly, if they're being an asshole, then absolutely not. Pricing's a tricky, prickly subject. So to be honest, I'm still figuring it out. As you grow as a designer and you're more experienced, your perspective and your process towards pricing will change. I've watched a lot of webinars and workshops about pricing as a creative professional. There are many strategies. I'll tell you what mine is right now. It's not complicated. So I used the Creative Earner Survey to help set my hourly rate. I had kind of an idea of what I wanted to charge, and then I looked up what other designers with my experience in Ontario were charging for freelance graphic design work. And then from that, I estimate how long I think a project will take me. And I always add a little bit of buffer time, both for unexpected work and also for the things that you spend time on and forget about, like, answering emails and, answering text messages from your client. And then I multiply that amount of hours times my hourly rate, and voila, I have a price. And I usually give clients a range, with that price being in the middle. So I find price ranges are easier for clients to digest, especially if they're new to working with a designer. It makes them feel like there's some wiggle room, and I think it makes you look a little bit more experienced. Just be super clear about what is included in that range. You don't want any scope creep happening. So my biggest piece of advice for people is to not do work for a price that future you is going to feel bad about. So this is different from looking back 10 years from now and thinking you could have charged more for a project. What I mean is, don't do work for a price that isn't worth your time. So you're a valuable human being, your time is worthwhile, and it's up to you to decide how much that time is worth, and there are resources to help. So for more help deciding if you should work for free and suggestions for what to say if you decide not to, you can use the fee, free, or plea tool from the RGD. A good rule of thumb, if it feels wrong, it is. And then, like I said, you can download the results of the Creative Earner Survey from the RGD website as well, and that will give you a whole bunch of comparison numbers to look at. You might be wondering how I know how to estimate the timing of projects. I know how long things take because I obsessively time track. Time tracking for me is a necessary evil. It also comes in handy when you need to invoice your clients and do your taxes, both also necessary evils. I've been doing it for long enough now that it's literally second nature. So I accidentally track my time for things that aren't work related. Like seriously, I catch myself doing it all the time. I check my watch and I'm like, oh, 10 minutes, and it's like doing dishes. So I track client, project, obviously, date, time, obviously, time spent, and I do that to every 15 minutes, and I either round up or down because in the end it will even out. And then also what I did. So I'm tracking the time so that I can charge the current client properly, but I'm also tracking the time so that I can charge future clients properly, because if a similar project comes along, I can go back and be like, yes, I know how long that takes, or about. Another thing that students often ask me about is process. So it's totally okay to feel lost at the beginning of a project. I was listening to a podcast recently with Rebecca Pales Friedman. She's the founder of Interwoven Design. And she said something about our work as designers that I'd never really thought about before. So she said, we have a very interesting line of work because we provide solutions to clients, but we sign contracts and agree to work with them before we know what the solution is. When you think about that, that's kind of funny because a client asks, can you solve this issue I'm having with design? And you say, yes, of course. But you don't know exactly what you're going to do yet. You just know that eventually you will find a solution to their problem. So for me, the most important part of the process is that messy part of the beginning when you have no idea what you're going to do. This is actually the beginning of the design squiggle by Damien Newman. I don't know if you've seen this before, but the design squiggle is a simple illustration of the design process. So from the website, you can actually go to designsquiggle.com. The journey of researching, uncovering insights, generating creative concepts, iteration of prototypes, and eventually concluding in one single design solution. So that's what this squiggle is supposed to represent. It's intended to convey the feeling of the journey. So beginning on the left with mess and uncertainty, and ending on the right in a single point of focus, which is the design. So every designer goes through this. And I think that's the beauty of the design process. So we know eventually we'll end up at the end of that squiggle with a focused straight line. And that's usually when it gets boring. That's when you don't want to work on it anymore. But in order to get there, you have to muck your way through the uncertainty at the beginning. So get your inspiration from anywhere. So not just Instagram, Behance, and Pinterest. Use your past experiences, your hobbies. Talk to the client if you can. Get to know them. Ask them what kinds of things they like seeing and doing. I remember in my first year of graphic design school, I was chatting with my illustration instructor about an idea for a project. And he said he was finding that a lot of students were just regurgitating the things they saw on social media. He was like, I can predict what I'll see for this project simply by opening Pinterest and searching for the project topic. So you might have heard this before, but don't do what everyone else is doing. When everyone zigs, zag. So design trends are cool and you might follow them unintentionally, but try not to intentionally copy the work or style of others. In my projects, especially for branding and for identities, I try to make sure everything I do has some sort of meaning. So I look for opportunities to be a little bit clever and strategic. So oftentimes you can find like a small, seemingly insignificant detail that makes something super unique. And then if you blow up or highlight that detail, then bam, you have zagged. So this is actually a project from my first year of my design program. The project was to design a pair of stamps with a Canadian theme. That was it. That was the brief. I love lettering, and I wanted to do something a little bit crazy. So I thought, well, maple syrup and snow are pretty Canadian. So I chose two phrases from O Canada, and I started practicing. I literally started lettering with maple syrup in the snow outside our classroom, and I think my classmates thought I was a little bit nuts. So eventually I realized it was hard to control what was happening with the syrup melting in the snow. And my images weren't how I imagined they would look. So I also ran into an even bigger obstacle as time passed. This was March and the snow was melting. So I was losing my canvas. And these final images were actually done in a photo studio using maple syrup and plastic paper with fake snow that I got from my photography instructor. The other thing that really works for me is being super organized. So being organized means you have more time for work, for sleeping, for Netflix, for playing with your puppy, whatever you want to spend your time on. And who doesn't want more time? I've always been a really organized person, but I found that some of the skills that I have make me a really successful designer and team member. There are a million ways you can be organized. I will tell you a few ways that I am. So I use a bullet journal. I don't know if anyone else here uses one, but I use it to track my daily to-dos and then monthly important dates or tasks. Every morning, go through my email, my calendar, make sure I don't miss anything. You can do it the night before if you're a night owl. I won't go through the nitty-gritty of how I do this, but there are tons of resources online if you want to start or use a bullet journal. There's a short 5-minute video that I use to get started. I can send it to you, just message me on LinkedIn. And also, like, my bullet journal does not look this beautiful, which is why I use this wonderful person's photo from Unsplash. It doesn't matter what it looks like as long as it helps you. The second one is folder and file organization. I know it's not sexy, but it will save you loads of time if your files are organized. I still lose time searching through my old school folders looking for things. And yes, I still use projects and images from school. I didn't learn how to properly organize files until my first studio job. And now I use that method for everything. So again, I won't go into the nitty gritty, but if you're interested in my file organization systems, send me a message on LinkedIn. I will tell you all about it. The other thing is keeping everything. So now that you know where to find it, because you're all nice and organized, you can reuse things to save yourself time. So things like project presentations for clients, layouts for things that come up all the time, like brand guidelines. These are the guidelines I did for that next vote project. Basically, you're creating your own templates to use a base design. Like, you have a base design already to start from. So half the work's done for you already. And then lastly, take notes. I know, boring. I'm the type of person that in order to fully pay attention to someone, I need to be taking notes. So it doesn't look like I'm paying attention, but I am. Listen to your client, your instructor, whoever it is that's giving feedback. Write it down. You might think you're going to remember it all. You won't. And they will be impressed to see you taking such lengths and respect for their thoughts and ideas. So I will leave you with this. In the words of Anthony Burrell, work hard and be nice to people. Build a good reputation, both as a designer and as a person. The design community is small. If you're an amazing designer, but an asshole to work with, you won't get very far. So thank you for listening. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. I also have my Instagram there. It's mostly puppy photos, but it's still fun to look at.
I have to see if I'm following you on LinkedIn. I want to see puppy photos. That was amazing. Thank you, Ceri.
You're so welcome. I don't know how I stopped sharing.
I have, as somebody who has benefited from Ceri's organization and in so many ways, I am very, very grateful for your organization, and certainly why I would like you to be on the board forever, because it is a special designer that is as organized as you are, and as willing to take on new things all the time, which I assume is because you're saving so much time because you're so organized.
Yeah, I mean, it probably has something to do with it.
Questions for Ceri?
There you go. Yeah, hit me up.
Yeah, yes, you can go. Yay! Thank you so much, Ceri. It was so great. Yeah, at the beginning of the presentation, I was like, okay, I have this question, but your presentation was so good that you covered so many of them while you were presenting. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned about you really love learning and keep learning about design, and you want to like get your master's later on. And you know, like when we're in design, like it's like we're always in design school because we are great designers, always wants to learn. So like, how do you learn and grow your knowledge and expertise when you're working?
When I'm working, honestly, I learn the most from other people. So it doesn't matter whether it's a designer or a creative director, like obviously I would learn from them, but I found even people on my team that do completely other different jobs from me, I learned so much from them, because in order to be a good team member, like you have to do good work, but you also need to be able to work well with everybody else. So that was one of the biggest things when I did my placement and then I started working at Studio Locale. I was like, whoa, I have all these other people that I need to make sure that I'm fitting like my puzzle pieces working with everyone else. Like, even project managers, I had to kind of get used to that. Like, that was a huge part of the time tracking, right? Because they are like, okay, you have X number of hours to work on this. And if I wasn't tracking my time, they would not be very happy with me. So I would say the biggest thing is other people for sure. Like, talk to other people, get them to look at your work, even if they're not a designer. Like, it's just super interesting to hear what other people see.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's
You're
great.
welcome.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. I wanted to ask, you've worked in all these kind of different environments, like you worked in studio, you worked freelance,
Yeah.
you worked in-house now. Do you have any tips about navigating like these changing, shifting environments as a designer?
You mean from going from one to the next?
Yeah.
I think just like honestly, just go easy on yourself and like ask questions. Like, it was definitely tricky going from the studio to in-house because it was almost like I'd had that year and a half out of school. I was like, okay, I know what I'm doing as a designer. But then, like you said, it's like things shifted. And I knew going in that it was going to be different, but it was quite different. So I think, yeah, just give yourself time, have patience with yourself. Hopefully, your team is super supportive and has patience with you because they know, like, just be really open about it. Like, I don't know how many people I said, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not used to this, or like, this is new to me, right? Like, just kind of like break down that awkward wall just to begin with so that they know. Um, but yeah, it's just give yourself time. Like with any new job, it takes you a while to get yourself situated. Like you're not gonna hop in and then be running on your second day. Like walk first, right? So, and I think like my team was super supportive. My manager was like just really excited to have me on the team. They'd never had a designer working full time for them, so they were just kind of like they had to hold back. They had all these things they wanted me to work on, so they were nice and didn't throw them all at me at the same time. But just yeah, just ask tons of questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It doesn't matter like how long you've been working as a designer, right? Like if you're in a new place, people are going to expect you to have questions, and if you don't ask any, they're going to be like, "What is she doing? Is she even working? Did she just fall asleep?"
I have a question.
Yeah.
So like I find that the main thing I struggle with in design is like staying organized, but also time management and like learning when to kind of cut myself off. I find that I'm very, very slow in my work process, and I know that over time that'll get better. But I
Yeah.
was just wondering because you're so good from what I've heard at organization and like you have such a focus on it. What are some tips that have helped you kind of like, like kind of maintain a set schedule around design, even though it's kind of this fluid
Mm,
process?
yeah, that was definitely a major adjustment coming from school where it was like you could literally spend day and night on your projects if you wanted to, and some of us do, because when you don't have anything else to work on, or if you don't have anything else, nagging at you, you can just like keep working on something until you have to hand it in, basically. Um, yeah, I think you do get better at that with time, especially like obviously with work. Once you have a deadline or you have a client, like it has to be done at some point. But I find like if I am 80% happy with it, I'm good. I find I can always push things. I can always like make it that much better. But if you can get yourself to 80%, then I'm happy. Yeah, it's just one of those things that, like you said, with experience, you'll just get better. And then you'll also like you don't have this in school, but like I said, you'll have other team members working with you, and they're going to be like, yeah, it's good, it's good, let's go. they're not going to be they're not going to be telling you, oh, why don't you try that lighter shade of blue, right? Like they're going to be like, no, it looks great, let's go. Or they'll have really constructive specific feedback to make it, bring it up to that 85-90%, and then send it to the client. So I think the thing you have to remember is that you're not going to be alone once you start working. You're going to have a whole team that's going to be helping you make the work as best as it can be.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit more about that sort of first year and a half that you spent in the studio as the junior designer and just sort of what your experience was like?
Yeah, it was awesome. I loved working at Studio Locale. The team there was great. Yeah, it was great because it's going to be, I think it will be similar to what I'm going into now, where it was like I never had a boring day because I always had, there's tons of different types of work. So there was, you know, we were doing like branding, packaging, tons of identity work, like continuation. So we had some clients that had very like set identity systems that we had to work within, and then we had others that we were still like expanding for them. Signage, there was just so many things, and then the variety of clients as well. So we had like construction, we had food, we had people that were like, we had real estate, we had someone who was a disability lawyer. Like there's just such a wide variety of types of work and then types of clients that I loved, because it was like something different every day. Now, I didn't have the way they did it there, and it will depend on where your studio, like what your studio does or what the agency does. But I had like, I think there was probably like 10 or 15 clients that were kind of like my clients. And then there was another designer working there, and she kind of had the rest. But I was familiar with all of our clients, just in case something came up, like if she was sick or on vacation and something came through, then I could work on it. So there was a little bit of consistency there, which was nice because you got to know the brand or the client. And then there were certain project managers that handled certain clients. So you started to build like a rapport with them as well. So you would get to know, like, it's almost like a secret language. Like you like literally just get to know the personalities of the clients. And the project managers, if they know the client really well, they can say, you know, they can read in between the lines basically. So they're like your translator. So they take what the client says and they translate it, and they're like, okay, I think you need to do this. And oftentimes they're right if they know the client well. So that was really interesting to see that dynamic playing out. And then, so I had project managers, and then there was also a creative director that I worked with. So his name's Phil at Studio Locale. And basically I would work with a project manager, and then any creative had to be looked at by Phil. So there were a few times where I was like, little tiny change, it's okay. And then I'd hand it off to the project manager, and they'd be like, has Phil seen this? And I'm like, no. Because like, you know, you can't get caught, right? Just in case, right? So it's like, okay, I'll go show it to him, right? But he'd be like in a meeting or like somewhere else, and it's like, well, I haven't been able to catch him yet. And they're like, I don't care. I'm not going to accept it unless I see his, like, because he would like initial it, right, on the proof. So, but it was great. And just like, you know, he would look at it, and there would be like tiny little modifications that he would make, and it would just like make it sharper, make it cleaner. And then I'd go back and do that, have him look at it, take it to the project manager, good to go. So it was a lot of like hopping in between. But one of the things that I really like doing, and I learned a ton of, when I was talking about having other people look at your work, we had a boardroom with like a big tack board, and I would pin up work. So like if I was, even if it was really only Phil that needed to look at it, I would pin it up in there. And then if people went in there and were on the phone or like on their break, they could see it too. And they would like write stuff on it, or like come by my desk and be like, hey, like I really like that option, or like, can you tell me why you did this? And it was just, like I said, it was just really interesting to have other people's eyes on the work in different perspectives, because like they had great ideas too. Like just because they're not a designer, like people have different past experiences and hobbies and different things that just like that information can just inform your design and just like push it up and make it a little bit better. Or like, you know, they might think of something that you didn't think of, and you're like, that's brilliant. That happens too. Especially if you're stuck on something. It's like, please just look at it. the hard part of being a freelancer. You don't have that other person to help you with come up with better ideas. So yeah, it was great. I don't know if there's like anything else specific you want to know about it, but it was just really, really fun working with a team and seeing all the dynamics play out.
That's awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess we're good.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions in the chat, so I think
Chelsea,
we
did you
should.
have a question? Sorry to interrupt you, Hillary.
Oh no, that's okay. You can always interrupt me.
Yeah, it looks like maybe her
I
audio
think
might not be working.
cutting out, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think your mic's off, Chelsea.
No, it says that
You
it's
can
on.
chat. You can write your question in the chat if you don't mind. It's a long question. Or her typing is not good.
My typing becomes really bad and slow whenever anyone's like waiting or watching me type.
Oh, she's well, everyone can do that. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I almost want you to do a webinar on file
Oh my gosh. Organized files make me so happy.
organizing files, yes. I bet you there's a lot of designers that would benefit from that.
Yeah. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you aren't already. And yeah, I will share my file organization system with you.
File wisdom.
Yeah. It's like one of those things where it's just like a habit, and then once you start doing it, you do it for everything, and then you just, you do it the same way for every single project, every single client, so you always know where everything is. And if you're naming your files properly, then you don't even have to look through the folders. You can just search for it.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ceri.
All your great questions.
I learned so much more about you than I knew, which is exciting. I didn't know you were born in England.
Yeah.
Nice.
British girl living in Canada with a Welsh name. Just confuse everybody. And then throw in my last name change and like, oh man, my identity is just all over the place. All right.
All right. Well, I'll see you on Thursday.
Yes, you will. All right. Have a good rest of your meeting. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.